I've been looking forward to this because, first of all, I've wanted to have you on my podcast for a long time, but also it seems like we need an excuse to just get on the phone. So it'll
I
be half
love it.
catch up call, half presenting Robb Havassy on my podcast.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here, and it's been fun watching you kind of spread your wings and do all kinds of fun stuff. I was just telling my girlfriend, a bit about you and your family, your awesome family, the Chels and the kiddos, and a little bit of our history too. So she was like, "Oh wow, you didn't tell me about any of this," and I'm like, "Yep." But
History.
yeah, you guys, yeah. Anyway, big fan of you and Chelsea and the team and family that you guys have built together, and it's a huge part of any family, but certainly an artist's life is having a teammate.
Yeah,
Anyway, but you
appreciate
guys have made it happen, and yeah.
Well, you know better than most. It's making it happen, not made it happen, right? It's like always it's a process of like trying to chase your tail.
Yeah, working. It's never end. That's one of my famous, not famous, but go-tos with any creative. Like it never ends. You
No,
never get there. You're not. If you ever think that you're there, you've just passed you by. Just been passed by.
really true, and it's kind of depressing, but it is true. I think a lot of people looking in from the outside at like either one of our careers probably gets like the wrong idea at times because
Sure.
I think part of our job is making it look easy and only highlighting the amazing stuff, which thank God there's plenty of it. So that's certainly authentic, but then
Yeah.
they don't see all the other stuff in between.
Yeah. It's the whole. Was it the duck on the water on the surface?
Yeah.
Swimming in the water, you look so smooth and effortless, but when you look underneath, it's just the frantic
Mm.
paddling and redirecting. And yeah, absolutely, it's quite a life. I think anybody like us that's 100% committed to it is you know and for sure understands, and it's a rare bird, and we all know what a survival test it is. And answering a calling, I think more than anything is, people don't quite get that, because a calling is something unique and special, and it puts us in this place where we have to do it. There's no like, you have to do it. However you're going to do it, figure it out, because this is what you're meant to do. And if you don't do it, then you're really kind of like, giving the bird to life, just going, yeah, gave me this gift, and I'm going to go do something that will give me stability and security, and you know something different than what we do.
I was talking to an artist friend of mine like the other day, I guess it was, and we were using the analogy of like being an artist is sort of similar to like watching the stock market because it's like your career has these ups and downs, like these peaks, and you're riding the peaks, and then all of a sudden it's like, and then you're like, oh, I've got to get back up there. When for you, if I said to you, Rob, when do you think those some of your favorite peaks were? When were the moments where you were like, my stock is high, things are amazing? Talk
Yeah,
about that.
for sure. I mean, interesting. My start with art really was after college, and after uh, a different career, different pathway. So I came to the art through after graduating from college, after going traveling around the world modeling. Some people know that was something that I was doing for a living for some years. So I found art in my mid 20s, and was painting and creating while I was back home in Newport, when in between trips and stuff. And so, like, the first the the art came about, during that time, and I kind of got deep into it, and it really, once I started sharing it, really early on, I was doing these watercolors, these surfing watercolors that I would do when I was like traveling on some modeling gig in Italy or France, or something, when I was away from home, which at that time was Newport Beach. That's pretty much was my home since late '80s, and going to college at UCI. And Um, but I would be painting. I started painting these little watercolors based on surf mags, images that I saw that I would be kind of, uh, looking through when I was traveling. I was away from home for weeks or a month or two away from the ocean, and I would be, looking at these surf magazines, and so I started creating these little watercolors, surfing watercolors from some of the images that were in these magazines or something like that. And very early on, sorry, getting around to this, trying to think about how where this all started, but this all started because I was doing stuff with Bruce Weber, with Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein. Bruce Weber's a really famous fashion photographer and kind of career maker. He shot guys like Sean Thompson, Ted Robinson, Kelly Slater, and Christian Fletcher, and like he got really the was really into this whole surf scene. So a lot of exposure to the surf culture through these campaigns that they shot for Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren. Buzzy Kerbox is another one now that he still shoots for Ralph Lauren. He's one of the last of those from the original kind of group. But Bruce had seen these watercolors that I was doing while I was shooting a job on Ralph Lauren, and we were hanging out. And he's like, "Wow, these are really cool, Rob." And I'm like, "Yeah, I just started them. Actually, did my first one and gave it him one of them as a gift, little my very first paintings as a just as a thank you to him. And he's a big surf fan, um, and that interest went to him talking to a big ad company that he was working with, Carlson and Partners out of New York, and they do a lot of big ad campaigns for him, and very quickly, like I was getting some calls from Bruce's studio and his assistant connecting me with them. Send us a bunch of your surfing watercolors. Might want to incorporate these into some of our campaigns and imagery. And so I was there. Here I was like modeling, just starting to paint, and they were talking about using these paintings, and it was going to be a lot of money. Very quickly it was like, wow. One, I loved the paintings, and really never, I wasn't anticipating doing art for a living. I was modeling. I didn't know I could do s- so much. It really kind of came out of me in a way where I was like, wow, I can't believe I can do all this stuff. And so then all of a sudden, here I am with this new thing that is really um, feels good and easy, and big ad company, New York ad companies, talking to me about using them for stuff. So it just I was in my mind, I'm going, wow, this would be amazing. I love this new thing that's happening to me with the art. I don't identify with being a model or being, I always identified with all the creatives, the designers, the photographers, the makeup artists. I was definitely attracted to them and that whole life, standing behind in front of a camera is not my thing. I was always taking the pictures since I've been little, with a camera, with a video, a film thing documenting. I've always done that. So like all of a sudden, like I'm going, wow, this would be really neat to do for a living. I know this is a long, long story, but it's my my pathway is like it started there where I was going, wow, this is neat. I love this. I'm good at it, and it'd be so great to do this for a living. And so the next few years, it was me. And honestly, nothing actually happened with that. They didn't use any of my art. I didn't get paid any of the money that we were discussing, but it kind of lit my fire inside, going, wow, there's a people are enjoying this. There's a potential here. So I felt like things were happening in that moment. They kind of, backed off, but at that point my fire was lit, and I was painting and painting and painting while I was modeling. I would go on these trips and take my paints with me, and or come back to Newport. And then, so what that did is when I came back to Newport and I was living, I was spending about half the time in Newport at home, surfing, kind of not working. I started taking the paintings that I had, and um, there was a local coffee shop called El Cappuccino in Newport Beach, and I was friendly with the owners. It was kind of a regular hangout, and that was a hub for the surf culture there. And if you know or not, like Newport, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach is like the headquarters for so many of the surf companies, surf brands. So it was the culture was cycling through this little coffee shop constantly. People that worked for all these different brands, fellow surfers. So my reputation all of a sudden was, as I hung these art, yeah, they let me hang the art in the coffee shop, which is a classic scenario. So, my art was up there, and it would start pushing me, like, to do something that would really captivate people. Like, hey, let me just do something bigger. Let me do a big barrel or something that will, really inspire people when they come into this coffee shop. And I had a mix of my work in there. I had like some of my figurative stuff, just kind of like you. We have a really broad breadth of subject matter and style and stuff. So, but that became a forum for me, and I was in there every day having coffee, and there was tons of feedback. There was people going, "Wow, I want to buy that." And as you know, when people start going, "How much?" It's like, head scratcher. It's like, I don't know. you know, Let me figure this out. I need to research, like, what art sells for. How do you sell art? So then it was getting drawn into this whole, like, wait, this is a way for me to make a living and earn money. And wow, okay, this is a different side of it, the selling of art, as a painting, like, which is kind of how we all start. um, and that all that interest and energy led to, like, some, talking to some of the brands like Silver, Billabong, OP, Reef. The open doors. It just was like, my name became, like, oh, I heard of that guy. Daddy, yeah, where I have some. You can. She wants some of my coffee. Um, yeah, so that was the next kind of step for me beyond, like, the initial interest in, while I was modeling. It was the time back in Newport surfing, being part of the culture there, and then creating art and having people recognize me and my art, and start paying me interest, paying me compliments, and then, like, I want to buy that. How much? Figuring out how much my art is worth, and then the key was, like, going, well, how about if I take pictures of my art and make prints of them and allow people to buy them for whatever. Let's say, hey, I've decided that this painting's $500. Oh gosh, that's too much. Well, do you want to print? So I mean, I was doing copies at Kinko's, color copies at Kinko's. So that became like a regular thing where I was making prints for people. And these things led to, the attention led to, um, a show opportunity in Newport, to exhibit, like, this, like, my first year of painting, year and a half of paintings. I just went nuts, just painted and painted and painted. Had like couple hundred paintings, all different sizes and styles, and I had this show, um, at the, oh gosh, what's it called? A waterfront, restaurant. Blanking on it right now, but uh, the LA Times came and did a story on it, and I got, like, a feature cover story on, like, surf artist opens. So it, that was more attention. People going, "Wow, I saw that. That was so cool." And you know how it is, that when you get featured outside of your circle, that's what brings energy, and that's what I've learned. It's your connecting with people outside. If the art has truth in it, then it's like, build it, they will come. So if there's truth in the art, there will be response. Um, so these were, from there, it so many opportunities came from people just seeing my art in a coffee shop. It happened to be a hub. uh, and as in all these, there was never any question anymore whether this was something that I could do, and that things were happening and people were recognizing and liking what I did. you know and uh, and the doors started opening, and it was mostly in the through the surf culture in the beginning, and Newport locals. um, and that led to so many other things. But
It's like interesting because you're like so creative. Like in my head, I think you're one of the artists that I relate to most, both artistically as well as like being like a family man, like loving your kids and like um,
yeah,
like
we're
like you implied, like both of us really like the diversity of subject matter. We both experiment with styles, and it's really cool because we both kind of got to that place on separate paths, and then we sort of like met in the middle. And when I first discovered your work, I remember the exact moment I discovered your work. I was hanging out at a surf shop in New Jersey, where I live, the Jersey Shore, and one of my friends was managing one of the surf shops, and I think you had your calendars in there. I think it was, and he
yeah,
was like, he was
yeah.
telling he's like, "Oh, Jay," this is my friend Vince. He was like, "Jay, you gotta check out this other guy, Robb Havassy. He has really cool stuff." And this was like the very beginning of my our career sort of having its first pulse. It was just started to like come alive. And I saw your work. I'm like, "Oh, that's really cool," you know. And I think I reached out to you shortly thereafter. And that's I think when we first got on each other's radar. But I since I got to know your work and since I've got to know you, I really love how we share that interest in not being
Mhm.
afraid to like break out of what people expect from us. Like you will do these really elaborate pieces with lots of detail, and then you'll do this super loose painting of a flower, and then you'll do this very detailed, almost photorealistic painting of like a golf course, and then
Mhm.
you'll do this like crazy figurative, trippy thing of like two women or something. These crazy like,
It's
just
good.
back and it's like I'm the same way, like, I hate being boxed in as, like, just one style, one subject matter, and I always admired that about you. That's really, really, really cool that, you have that creative courage, I guess you can call it.
Appreciate that, and I totally, absolutely agree with that. I've always recognized that in you, that the similarities that we have, and kind of just branching outside of like one path or one style or one thing just makes no sense as an artist. Like to It's like the opposite. It's like you're a creative, create,
Yeah,
geez, take what you feel, and that's part of like also laying a pathway for maybe a career or something like that is finding, reaching beyond, building a style, finding something unique, and I think that's another big part of it is finding your own style, and not looking like everybody else or the people that have come before. You've done that. You definitely have your own style. I remember my good buddy, and you know him, Patrick. Love Patrick. He's on Maui right now and does great work. But he came to me and kind of around the time a little bit before you and I became acquainted, but saw my art, knew my art, kind of reached out to me. I had a common friend, and we started hanging out. And he was like, "What? I want to help you. I want to learn, whatever." And then I recognized real quick with him that he was really talented. Great creative. He's doing a lot of digital stuff. And so he started hanging out, and we started talking, and I was giving him some advice and whatnot. But it was all about like, well, a lot of your art looks like mine. I like this stuff here that I'm seeing. You should develop that. That seems kind of unique and interesting. And but kind of like, wow, your stuff's great, but it looks like other people's. It doesn't, and somewhere along the lines, you need to find something that separates yourself, where you go, wow, this is unique, and that's where you can build a career. Start there, and through a bunch of different stages of us hanging out, I eventually led him to my printer, a guy I was working, I was doing prints with, and um, he wanted to make prints. I'm like, it's a good place to start. Allow people to buy your work without having you to sell the original for less than you feel it's worth or whatever. Give people options. And he started making these prints, and some of the print process, you'd have ones that's being a printer, you're proofing stuff. Oh, that one didn't come out very good, or there's a blemish or a bubble and it becomes trash or whatever. And he ended up taking these extra prints and made collages, cut them up into pieces, and then rebuilt them, pasted them on, and created paintings and images. And I was like, my God, you've done it. You've
Mm,
done it. So we all find our way there in different ways, but it's having that unique original style, like, like you have, like Pat has built, like, so many different people. It's fine to be inspired. We're all inspired by other artists, and by each other we're inspired by, which is a beautiful thing. And we take something, but you got to make it your own. And it's tough to see artists out there who just can't do that. They're kind of just drafting off other artists' work, and um, it's that's I don't know. I mean, we all get to choose our direction and our path, but I appreciate artists like you, like so many Renaissance men and women out there who create on so many different levels, expressing, music, writing, art, photography, gosh, clothes, so many different things. So, um, but, yeah, I love that about you. Just in that same thing that you have your own style, and I can see from both of our pathways and our older art that it definitely comes from looking at other art and other artists and how we found our, kind of got there. It doesn't just drop on your head. You kind of find it along the way of learning how to paint, and you learn from those who came before. So it's
mm.
built on that, just like music. Hard to find, you know, an artist that comes out of nowhere and has something so unique and beautiful all on its own. I mean, that's like the unicorn.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a rare thing indeed. As you're talking, I wanted to bring up this because I want your thoughts on it. People always they like to label everyone when it comes to music, when it
they
comes
need
to
a label.
people love to put things in like digestible little chunks that they can understand. And it's like
Correct.
I understand it because I sort of do similar. Everyone sort of does that. Like you want to chunk things down, you want to label things, you want to make things understandable. And we for better or worse have gotten labeled as like surf artists, which I always sort of push back a little bit because I feel like that sort of like limits our potential and it limits our vision, especially like artists like us that aren't like you're like I said, you're painting golf courses, you're painting flowers. Those are certainly not things that have to do with surf. Yet both of
Yeah.
us are known as such. What are you showing me? Oh, is that a new piece?
No, but just not serve.
Yeah, yeah. There's your yeah. For people just listening, he's giving me a little tour around his house. I remember when I uh, first stayed at your house. You're kind enough to let me stay at your house right after Marin was born, and there was like 4 billion
Yeah.
paintings in every room.
Yeah, they're still kind of the deal.
But
But
what's your thoughts on that? When people say, like, it's understandable for marketing purposes, you wanna have a couple labels presented to you so you can sort of SEO optimize your career, right? But, you're so much more than that. I think I'm so much more than that. So when people say that, I understand it, but I wanna be
right.
known as just like an artist. I don't wanna be known as a type of artist. And I think visual arts are interesting because you don't really see that in music so much. Like when pick a band, you name a band, like the lyrics are about any number of things. And it's not like I just saw Dave Matthews, for instance. It's not like every song is about crashing into me, or it's not like every song is about love per se. So they're not labeled as like a love music band or a
Right.
heartbreak music band. It's just like they have a musical style, and then
Yeah.
that musical style can do whatever they want within that musical range and style, and they can stretch out of that style. And I think with visual arts, it should be more the same way,
Yeah.
where you and I have this visual way of seeing the world, and what subject matter and what we choose to aim that talent or ability towards shouldn't be confined by one subject matter, yet it seems to be. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's our limitations, or who we are as humans. It's this need to like understand our surroundings and our environment, and go and go, what is that? Let's give it a name, rather than going, wow, it's so many different things, so many
Right.
different, it's ripples in a pond, 10 different stones you throw, and that's the creative energy. And it's like, okay, how do we define that? Whoa, well, let's talk about that. How many stones did you just throw into that pond? And I think, a way I look at it is I have a lot of, different kinds of things it's passions. So passions and the way we look at life, moods. So yeah, I mean, I've been labeled a surf artist, and I've pushed back on that like you have, and it's because certainly it's a passion, and it flows in through my art, and people go, wow, it's easy to identify and categorize. Oh, wow, you paint surf art. Yes, I do, but that's not all what I paint. Oh, but that's okay. But that's what I see, and I like that. And it's the limitations of us as people needing control, being able to go, okay, I can understand this and put a label on it, so that makes me more comfortable with it. And I mean, I think every great artist that has
Mm.
pushed beyond like a one style, which is pretty much every artist that I love. But I mean, say like Picasso, for example, who dabbled in everything and had 20 different styles and times. And even art historians, they try to like, oh, okay, here it is, these are the stages. And you can see it in like the relationships. Love is one of those things. Having gone through that, it changes with each relationship, and that inspirations change. But um but yeah, I mean, even Picasso, they everybody that tried to label him and define him as something, and he just gave him the, screw you, I do what I do, and I'm going to
Yeah.
do 10 other things. Just because you're saying that I do this, I'm going to do something else. And it's much easier if you have one style, to be marketed by, let's say, a gallery or anyone, because they feel very comfortable. Here's who this artist is. They're defined as this style, and this is who they are. Super easy for a business to go, oh, or a gallery to say, hey, I can sell this guy because of this. I confuse the hell out of galleries my whole life. It's like, wow, what do we do? What do we do with this? Like,
Uh,
well, and it's the limitations that that part of society, the business, the art business, if you can say that, like a gallery or something who's trying to sell your art, they need to be able to commodify it and go, oh, here's what it is. This is how we're going to sell you. Like, and until they're comfortable with how much of a box they can put you in, it makes it very difficult. And you know, I, I hate the label, like a limited label, but as I've gone forward in my career and realized that, one, there's nothing wrong with that, and part of me doing like Surf Story and you know looking to collaborate with artists like yourself that have so much more going on is I want to show people that being a maybe surf inspired artist or an ocean inspired artist is just the beginning, and that you know it isn't lesser art because of whatever earlier connotations. Let's show this genre, these surf inspired artists. Let's show who they are. Let's look into what this actually is. Is it really just art that's surfing related, or is it art that has an undercurrent of this thing? So I've instead of trying to fight it, I've tried to just educate people
yeah.
uh, with my art. Like, hey, look, I do all these other things. So yes, I do paint surf art, but like, I love golf, so I paint golf artists. Golf. I love you know beautiful landscapes. I love Monet and Van Gogh, and just the beauty of of what they do. And I'll throw myself into that. And but yeah, it's one of those things I don't think we can ever get away with, because we're dealing with a world around us that we all try to find our place in it. Where do I fit into this related to everyone else, or um, what does this mean? The critique, art critics, what a silly thing that is. The deconstruction of someone else's art. I'm going to tell you what this artist meant with this painting. I mean, how absurd is that? I laugh at it.
It's bonkers because
But
most of the time we don't know what it is. I feel like when when the art is, like, flowing as it should, which is not always, like, a lot of times we use a recipe or a formula that we've used before, and sometimes it's based on some theory or whatever, but when it's, like, really, really flowing and you're, like, so into it, you don't know where it's coming from or why it's there, or there's no meaning necessarily behind it, not always at least, and I kinda like that, it feels like artists like you and I'm basing this on our experience together as friends and talking and seeing each other's work. It feels like we're more about painting peak experiences, peak emotional experiences, and surfing and ocean lifestyle happens to be one of those things, one of many things that just sparks something within us that makes us keep thinking about it. And I always tell people I
Yeah.
like to paint my lifestyle, but it's also like I like to paint things that just resonate in my brain and don't go away. Like if I see the sun pop up over the ocean on the East Coast or sun go down over the ocean on the
Yeah.
West Coast, or I see a beautiful woman walk by, or I see something, or if I'm at a concert and those visions or sounds or
Yeah.
feelings just stay in my brain and they're just like playing over and over and over again. That's what
Yeah.
I paint. And it just so happens that living at the beach, as you
Yeah.
do, that just happens to be one of the many, many things that do that for me.
Well expressed. Yeah, I love that, and I try to tell people, yeah, I'm inspired by life. Everything I see, and exactly the same thing. I mean, I see details, tiny little pieces of, I'm being, I mean, a photographer based. I've been shooting photos my entire life and film and stuff. So it's about frame.
Yeah.
And I think that's what has made me good at the art is that I can look at it, kind of bring something down and look at a piece of the world, and all the way down to this microcosm of, as you say, the light shimmering off the water, or a flower, or a beautiful woman, or the clouds, the way they're moving, and just the color, the motion. I mean, it ignites something in me that just sits there. And a lot of times, I mean, I have a thousand more paintings in my head that I didn't paint,
Yes.
from things that I've seen, and they're just there rattling around or in the background, and sometimes they come back and it's like, wow, oh yeah, gosh, what am I going to choose to try to paint or create, or but yeah, I think you nailed it. And that really is the creative process, certainly for artists like ourselves that are inspired by life, really everything around us, and that we see, the little things, and can take something tiny, small, one little piece of inspiration, and our imaginations, are the romantic souls that we are. We put it into, something digestible.
Yeah, I love that we both also love to both reduce things down to the simplistic and also expand things to like way more complex than, than we can even fathom because that's how most people I think, or at least that's how artists I think see the world. Is like sometimes you view a scene and you just take it all in with all the details. And sometimes, like you said, you just zero in on a little thing, and that little thing might just be a very almost graphic, shape of something. And that shape takes on more of an illustrative graphic design quality as opposed to maybe if you zoom out or zoom in a different way or look through a different lens in your mind, it's more about all the details and all the composition and how crazy can you take it. And it's
Yeah.
it's through the same artist eyes, but it's just what you're choosing to look at. I like to think of it, speaking of Zeppelin on my shirt here, you have like their first album so metal and so hard, so and then they go to like going to California where it's all like acoustic guitar. And I've watched interviews about them at the time. People were freaking out, like, "What? You have an acoustic
Freaking out.
guitar? You have an
The same.
acoustic
That's what I was
guitar?
saying.
What the hell?"
It's part of the limitations of the audience, really trying to understand, like, wait, what are you doing there?
Right? You
You're
can't do that.
changing? Don't change.
Yeah,
Like, well, you're gonna like this. Trust me, and
yeah,
if you don't, so be it. Somebody else will like it, and then my audience builds, and that's a good way to look at it. You're appealing by broadening your art. You're appealing to a broader range of aesthetic sensibilities and stuff. But yeah, yeah, music is really the thing, and I think we've talked about this, is really for me, the truest form of art, the purest form of art, to be able, because you don't, it's one sense that you're using, close your eyes, close everything, just listen, and you feel it, and the highest compliment I have ever gotten, and I've gotten it a bunch, and I'm sure you have, is that you paint like music. You paint like, Jack Johnson. There's a great one. I love Jack, and he's such a natural. But like that's it, dude. I mean, I try to paint like music where the audience is feeling it. They don't have to think, they're just feeling it. It's the color, it's the motion, it's a um but
That's I
but
think
yeah.
where that's people, artists like us, I hope I'll put in italics. I hope that we can stand out in this like AI world because I don't feel I think
Ah,
AI can do some incredible stuff, but the soul and the passion in the work, there's
oh
something
yeah.
about that you can probably throw AI at Jack Johnson and come up with a great Jack Johnson song from AI, but there's something about when it's from a human, at least now, maybe not in 5 years, but at least now,
Uh,
there's just something about it that has like an X factor to it, to the point where I'm sure you get this also. I get people buying or admiring some of my, let's say, for instance, my surf genre work that don't even surf, that live in the middle of like Wisconsin or something.
correct.
And
Absolutely.
they'll message us saying, "I'm not even into surfing, but I feel something about this." And I'm like, "Great, that then it worked because you're feeling the feeling that I felt when I painted it."
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, that is the I talked about that a lot, in different realms. I'm talking, somebody's relating to an experience that, I mean, just we digest and watch movies, and a lot of times we're watching things that take us somewhere. They take us somewhere. Sweetie, can you put that down just a little bit? Do you want to take that into the room? Yeah, her. And you can take that into the other room or whatever. I know it's getting a little loud.
No, that's okay.
Waking up.
My kids are upstairs doing the same, so I get it.
Yeah, just yeah.
I
So
want to
that's just
change gears for a second. I want to
okay.
bring up a subject and see where it goes because I feel like you probably have a lot to say about this. So you're someone like you said used to be a model. I definitely was not. And then you go into the scene where you're an amazing surfer. I am not. I'm an average surfer. And then on top of that, you're an amazing artist. So it's like you have these multiple subsects of culture that you've excelled in. And I want to approach the topic of ego, and I want to introduce the topic of ego and how, and when I say ego, I refer to it in like the Eckhart Tolle definition, where it's
Sure.
anything that makes you feel superior or inferior to other people, that both sides of that. And I want to approach this conversation with a compliment because one of the ways we first connected, one of the main ways we first connected, at least aside from casual conversation, is you were kind enough to include me in your first surf story book, which is an amazing compilation. It's about like a 50-pound book of amazing artists. And you were
It's
kind
wonderful.
enough to you were so kind enough to include me in it when my career was still relatively new. And I remember it meant so much to me that I remember exactly the Barnes and Noble that I was in when I got the phone call from you in St. Augustine, Florida, when I was living down there. And I remember stepping outside, and it was really hot, and you were talking to me, and I had to get to a quiet spot to talk about it. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. And then once I started processing it, I also became perplexed because there's this part of the ego where you're like, I don't want to draw attention to other artists. I'm trying to make it on my own. I'm trying to pay my bills. And then here
Yeah.
you are as someone who not only is bringing in a couple of artists, but lots of artists, many of which could be seen in some light as competition. Excuse me. And this whole book is based on, hey, my name's Rob and I made this book and here's everyone that I compete with in the scene. And
That
no, that can go on and on, that conversation, because you had an
okay.
amazing event in Costa Mesa, which I was at, but I
Yeah.
wanna approach the topic of ego, how you feel about that. What was maybe your internal dialogue going on with that project? Did any of those conflicting thoughts enter your brain, or are you immune to that?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something certainly that I think is very honest, of you to throw out there, and your awareness of that, because that certainly is not every artist. And I dealing with over 200 artists for Surf Story, the first, the two books. It's an amazing group of talent, and uh, just for a little bit of perspective on like Surf Story, like one of the reasons was inspired by my lawsuit with Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister when they ripped off my stuff, and they were ripping off the surf culture and their brand, and kind of just owning it and basically going, oh, this is just some art, that we're retooling or adding, putting on our t-shirts and stuff. And it's like, well, those are, you took my board and you made it, put your logos on it, and you've taken these photographers' works and you've used them and kind of said, hey, look, this is us. It's not you. So like, you are taking something that isn't yours, and you're taking something from a culture that I love and that I'm a part of. You've taken from my art now, so you've really crossed the line. And that started when I sued them and ended up winning. And it inspired process inspired me to say, gosh, I want to share this culture with people. It's not just me. I'm a fan of, John Severson, founder of Surfer Magazine, the father of surf art. I became a fan of his, and just through the imagery and his history, and then we became acquainted. Bruce Brown was another one. I loved Rick Rietveld from back in the day when I was in college. I used to have his Maui and Sun posters on my wall. This is before I was doing art. So I'm Ken Oster. Like, I loved Ken's work, and was became befriended him too. Um, so it started that first, before I was an artist, I was a fan of art. I've always loved art, even though I wasn't like practicing and making art all the time, and that wasn't really a part of my life until like in my 20s. But I loved it. So, fast forward to this lawsuit and them stealing from the surf culture, and at that point, I had a good position in the surf culture. I had my own sandal line with Reef. I was working with sponsored by OP and doing those calendars with OP. I was making art for Sector 9 and those skateboards. I had a lot of people who knew my work. Some of my paintings were getting auctioned off at like the industry events for at that time record amounts, where like people saw me as one of the, as kind of like the main people that was, like, whoa, this is surf art, this is really cool, this is different, whatever. So in that process of creating this project to elevate and put a shine a light on all the amazing creatives that I loved in the industry, or the culture. Honestly, not the industry. It's not the sir. We did not come out of the surf industries. The art created the industry out of the culture, and I wanted to celebrate that culture and to do it just with myself. Oh, let's do a book on me. You know, like I wanted, so I come at it as a fan, certainly first, and I can step outside myself and be objective and go, wow, I feel that. I've always liked that from before I was a creative, in making my own art. I loved, Ken Oster's paintings. Before I was painting, I tried when I had money, when I was, successful model and had money wasn't a problem. I was buying art, and so I had talked to Ken Oster about painting this painting of this secret spot in Mexico. And, you know, in the end, like, I ended up doing it but I like, as I was going, hey, Ken, I want you to do this. It kind of happened around the same time that the art happened to me. So like very soon after I had talked to him about a commission, I started painting. I got this art kit 26 and fell into it and was, wow, I can do this. So I was painting my own stuff. But back to what your question, I'm a fan. So when I started thinking about, God, I want to create some amazing project, a museum show, an art show, and feature as many of the surf artists that are out there that I know or don't know, to show the world, to share that with the world, that this is a real culture, of strong, strongly driven by creatives, and that really, in my mind, that the surf culture and the creatives that are in it are the most influential, creative movement in modern society. That we have influenced the people, I say, creatives, music, art, photography, whatever that are surf inspired, the surf speak, the surf movie. It has influenced fashion, it has influenced language, it has influenced music. It's so many things that I was like, wow, this culture's fucking incredible. This is something that I want to show people. Look at the breadth of this. This isn't just me or a few other artists. Like, I'm going to dig into the different regions that I see all around the world. I'm going to have like amazing people like Greg Escalante, who Greg well, and he was a great promoter of the surf arts, the lowbrow surf movement, one of the founders of Juxtapose magazine. He passed sadly some years ago, but was a great champion for the culture. No, I still have a bracelet. Oh, you do still have your bracelet. I love it. She made a bracelet yesterday. Little creatives, but as I was putting this project together and reaching out to people, people were, uh, uh, going, "Wow, this is really cool that you're doing this. I want to help you. Like, you should talk to this guy. You should talk to this guy, or this person, this artist. I want to introduce you." So people like Greg and Gordon McClellan, who was publishing John Severson at the time, and doing all Bill Ogden and a few others. I started, like, I had this top 50 of artists that I went through my mind of, photographers and fine artists, looking for as many women as I could find that were making art. And I just started building this list, and very quickly, like, it was over 50 into close to 100 people. You were someone that was on my radar, that I was just realized that what I needed to do was to just build this book, this show of as many people that I really appreciated their aesthetic, their uniqueness, where they were in the world. And I'm going to just, as a fan, as somebody who, I was fighting this, battle against corporate America, taking from our culture. Like, I was arming myself with, like, the support that this culture and its art is legitimate. It is something that you can put up against any great art movement in history. And it's like, people were kind of almost like, oh yeah, no. And it's like, no, no, no. I'm pragmatic as anybody, and it comes down to facts, truth, like what you can show and prove. And it's like, here, I'm going to prove to you how incredible this culture is. And I'm going to do it because you talk about ego, because I don't need to be the best artist. I believe that, like, in music, I don't have a favorite band. I love so many different types of music, and as a surfer, as a person, I love art. I love so many different other artists. And you know I I'm the right personality for it, because I'm very competitive with myself. Yeah, and I compete with myself. Like, what can I do? How can I top myself? What can I do? But I'm not trying to be better than you. I'm not trying to be better than, you know, any of these amazing artists. Like, I think that we're better together. I feel like, if I could bring all these creatives together, the ones who are competitive, like, well, why are you doing this? Like, no, I don't want to be part of this. Like, it's giving attention to other artists. And it's like, well, then you don't get it. And there were artists that did that who just couldn't get over their egos, for sure. I dealt with a lot of egos that, like you're saying, that people who wouldn't promote other artists because, hey, man, I'm doing my thing. I don't want to promote other artists. I had that a lot. And I won over a lot of artists who kind of had that mentality, who got on board with the project and our art shows and stuff, and were, wow, this is really great. And it was immediately bonding. It was immediately inspiring so many different artists and energies. When we'd come together for these big shows, or whatever, they would make friends, and all of a sudden there would be a collaboration on the side and another collaboration on the side. And I'm somebody who wants to, in my own small way, save the world. And I believe that, it's about connections, and the more connected we feel with each other and our environment, the better we are, the stronger, the healthier we are. And that our selfish desires, me, myself, and mine, yeah, we got to look out for ourselves. And it's hard, being an artist. So I can understand people's reservations for not wanting to promote other artists. And get behind something that does that. Um, but it's important. And I saw myself as like, kind of like, I can do this. I'm the right kind of person to do this. One, I have people respect me and trust me. And that was a huge reason why I was able to do these books, was the trust, the faith that I was doing it from the inside, not from the outside, going, oh gosh, you guys, you and your art, I got this big gallery. I can promote all you and sell your art. I was like, hey, you know what? I know you. I feel you. Let's help each other. Let's use this as a way to elevate all of us. And I don't want people buying my art if they like somebody else's art better. They should go buy that person. And to me, there's a higher truth to saying, "Hey, you like that person? Let me connect you with them. They're great. Jay's an amazing guy. Let me connect you with him. Great family, great art. You like his stuff? Shoot, here he is." In the book and the shows were a way to do that with 100, 200 artists and people. To and sure, I missed out on sales or self promotion by doing that, but what an honor to do it too. So it's a feather in my cap. Books, are incomparable, and the things that we have done together, gathering shows have inspired so many people and have inspired so many movements. I remember the Swell art show that was in New York that was done by a kind of a higher end kind of a legitimate New York gallery. They did a Swell, this art show, and it was funny because they reached out to me and they got my books, and I won't name names or anything, but they used the books to build their own art show out of it. I wasn't invited to be in the show, but they like were using the basis of my work to say, hey, we're picking out of here the artist that we feel like we want to show. And that's fine. I wasn't didn't fit their idea of what they wanted to show, but it was like a more mainstream art show, um, in New York, and with much broader audience, and it was about surf art, surf inspired artists, and how great. Uh, so yeah, I look at it like as I've made the world smaller. I've brought people together. I've connected everybody, and for me, that's a higher calling than selling my own art or promoting myself specifically. Um, and I've always been that kind of person. Like, again, competitive with myself. I'm lightly competitive and aware of artists like yourself and our culture, people who are, you know, doing great things. Like, it's like, wow, look at that. It fires me up, but like, I don't want to try to beat them. I do my own thing, and I go, maybe it pushes me, or inspires me somehow, but like, it's, it's not my cause to sell art. It's my cause to create art and create connections, and try to bring people together, try to inspire people. And if it nets out in the end and I can make a living and create more stuff, then that to me is it feeds my ego, makes me feel good about myself and what I'm doing, and I'm leaving the world a better place, and building beauty into it and helping people who are wanting to do the same.
Yeah.
And so
I think there's the flip side of it also is as much as potentially highlighting your competition could in theory hurt you, I think it was also a brilliant marketing move to then strengthen your network by having all these other artists help to promote your book, which in directly
yep.
or indirectly then helped you. So I thought that was a super brilliant marketing move.
Thank you. Well, that's the funny thing too, and that goes right back to your initial question. You're maybe daughter of banana. Um, is that there? At the second book came out, Surf Story 2, and it was much bigger and so many much more broad in the kind of art that it artists and that it that were a part of it. Is that was it intersected um, with really the explosion of Facebook, social media, Instagram, and influencers, and people's followings went kind of exponential. Certain artists So that's for you, sweetie. Oh, it's not. Yeah. So I'm just about to get one. Okay, good. Daughter needed a banana.
It's
Um,
funny, like, I when I, opened my gallery, I had a gallery close to 10 years ago, and when I was planning that, even though the gallery unfortunately or fortunately didn't work out, at the time when I was opening it, I was like, "This is a great opportunity to kind of use the energy that you showed me," and you were amongst the first artists. I tried to make sure the first batch of artists that went in there were artists that were amongst the few that truly showed camaraderie to me, like people like you, like Sean Davy, like there were
mm,
certain artists that as I was starting things out, were very, very supportive, and I wanted to throw that back. And it's interesting because I sort of you were, being in Newport, you were immersed in this culture. When my career first sort of started to get some momentum, the idea of surf art, I didn't even know there was such a thing other
yeah,
than, like you said, like, I would flip through Surfer magazine when I was in high school and see, like, Phil or Rick's work. I knew, like, the Maui and Sons ads, and I didn't know
yeah,
anything about Rick, but, like, I loved that, but the idea of the whole surf culture living in New Jersey, other than going surfing with my friends, I didn't know anything about
a little different.
culture at all.
Yeah.
So, as I was sort of trying to put myself into the whole culture after I discovered it, I sort of discovered it sort of parallels with surfing itself in that when you go out surfing, when you're in the culture of surfing, there's a pocket of people that are very much like um, all about camaraderie and like brotherhood,
Mhm.
and friendship, and helping each other out and like teaching each other, like, yo, it's your wave, get it, that kind of vibe. And then there's like very
Other side.
clicky, very, like,
Yeah.
localism, like, "Get off my wave, this is our spot," like,
Yeah.
there's very
You're
much
not part
that.
of our crew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not from around here,
Um,
and there's very much that same exact mentality in the art world in general, but more specifically, as I was getting into, like, the surf art scene, there
yeah.
was some artists and brands and companies that were welcoming and kind, and there were some that I had to, like, freaking beat down the door to even
Yeah.
like a hello.
It
And
is.
then over time, I sort of, like, forced my way into a lot of places that weren't really welcoming at all until the point that I got myself unignorable. As soon as I got my career to
Yeah.
the point with very, very, very hard work to the point where they couldn't deny that I was, like, in existence, then they started to pay attention, and then there were some companies, a few, very few, some companies and brands that were very kind from the get-go, but it's
Yeah.
sort of interesting how that parallels surfing culture in general, don't you think?
Totally. Big time. Yeah. And I was gonna so let me flash back real quick. So
Yeah.
when the second book and the explosion of Instagram and everything and these artists, creatives feeling their power, like, oh, I have so many followers and I have this new agent that's promoting me. And you talked about how the different artists in the book, is great because they promoted the project and the book and whatnot. But what happened is in this transition, some of these artists that I won't mention, you know, all of a sudden we're like, whoa, I'm not going to share my network now. I like promised me, oh yeah, when the book comes out, I'm going to promote this. Oh my God, this is so great. I love this. And then there's a lag time about a year and a half, 2 years of putting the book together. I think it was actually 3 years because I moved to Costa Rica in that time and I kind of had to back burner it, but came back around to it. And by the time I got there, these people were like, "Oh, I'm too big and powerful. I don't want to share my network." And a lot of that whole idea of wow, there's these amazing influential musicians, surfer artists, painters, whatever, photographers who have a ton of social draw, million followers, lots of, a good voice. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to throw my support behind you anymore because and it was, God, the ego there, dealing with the realities of like, wow,
Yeah.
really, so it's that other side of the culture for sure. There are those who are super generous and they get it and they want to just my generosity to promote them was infectious and they wanted to you can have one of those because I'm telling you because no one bothering
Oh, yeah.
chocolate cup piece of chocolate you can have one, that's it. I know, honey, but I know. Well, you have a banana, and I'll make you some breakfast, and you can have something later. I love being a dad. Dad is who I am
Ever.
first and foremost. Is daddy,
Same.
and that's how I identify. That is my life. That's what inspires me. So I love pairing the two, as I know you do too. And
Well,
but yeah, it's the duality of our culture, the support systems, the way we create, the way we support each other or don't, the competitive nature, the egos. It's it's as diverse as the culture itself, and you can't really expect it to be any different. I mean, we want to be idealistic and go, hey, we're all on the same team, and we should support each other. And you're going to hear the other side of it going, I got my own shit. I got to support myself. I'm sorry, I'm not going to support you, and I'm just going to support me. And it's the same thing as like, going to a surf spot and people who don't want to share, hey, this is my wave, my spot, go home,
yeah.
or hey, you know what, just, you know, be respectful, be kind, you know, do your thing. Don't step on my toes, and it's all going to be good. So I'm an inclusive mofo. I believe that we are, that the world is, yeah, as I said, connections, building those connections. I think you talked about the AI thing. I think the more AI takes over and depersonalizes things, the more it's going to give reverence to the artist. It's gonna. I think there will be a pushback. Ultimately, for most people, that will be a desire, a yearning for the original art, and the connection with the human aspect of it. Just like going to a restaurant and ordering on a kiosk. I want to go. I go to the counter. If there's a counter, I want to go face to face with that person. I'm already pushing back on that part of as much as I can. Like I'm looking for the human connection, and I always will. And I think that's what we really all want. I think that right now AI is the shiny, loud thing that's kind of hard to ignore. It's there, the shiny object. We're just like, ooh, look at that, squirrel. And as a people, and we're fascinated by this thing. It's fascinating. It's powerful. It's scary as fuck. And I really think that it signals our downfall. Um, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but like I'm a sociologist, and that's my background, my study. I love people. I love the way we look at the world and how we react to it, and I just it's not a good thing for our society. There are good things about it, but the way it's going to be implemented already is implemented, and out of the box, the genie is out. And you know, I hope I hope that there's a resurgence and a real kind of revolution of getting back to our humanity, and without having the world being unplugged and restarted.
I don't think it's going anywhere. We can definitely go down this rabbit hole if you want to. I'm more than willing to do that. I just don't know if
I
you want. I
know
don't know
you
if
are.
you're into that or not. But I definitely feel a little different. I think it's here. It's here to stay. And I think that
Yeah.
as far as creativity goes, I think here's the skeptical side of it. The skeptical side of me says that I think our education, awareness, and appreciation of art and music, the standards have dropped dramatically. I think the education of and exposure to the arts and music has dropped to the point where people don't really know how to quantify or analyze or appreciate art and music. So that whatever is on the radio, whatever is on Spotify, that's just what's popular. That's just what the thing is. And whatever art is being shown to us, that's just what we will accept as being art. And I don't necessarily think that the standards that you and I have are going to carry over because we appreciate what it takes to make art, but people, especially kids, their attention span is like so freaking quick. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't really feel like I have that same optimistic view of people are going to be drawn towards the handmade. I think there'll be a sector of people for sure, and hopefully that
Yeah.
sector is big enough to maintain our careers. I hope.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere, and it's not going to change because things like business are always going to chase the money and the
Yeah.
efficiency. And for the first time in history, parents have no freaking clue what the job market is going to look like in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
You could have sort of said something like that in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and you would have been somewhat accurate, but you could have always said, "Hey, back then you would say, 'Oh, the world is changing. I have to learn how to code,' or." But now
Mhm.
it's like humans are being removed out of the equation,
Yeah.
and that's a big,
Exponential.
big difference, That's a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah, it's changing dramatically. The industries are falling away, and I've seen college and kind of education as being going on irrelevant very quickly. And I teach creative entrepreneurialism. That's my belief. However you do it, whether it's handmade or you're using digital, digital art or whatever, I believe that you know we're looking at a commercialism, that's internet based commercialism. So you better be part of that or working for somebody who is.
Yeah.
So I think that that kids these days learning how to use their creativity and having a base for being an entrepreneur and doing business, creating a marketplace, online. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of that because I think that that gives them power, um, and that will give them the tools to actually take part in this economy going forward. Because I don't, other than being a doctor or a lawyer or engineer or something that takes a high, a high concentration of study into a specific thing. Outside of that, like, I mean, college is ridiculously overpriced and overvalued. There is no pathway to, going and getting a career, going to college and then going, oh, you're going to have a career and a job. Nope, not anymore. As you say, freaks me out for our kids.
Big time. I'm scared for the kids for sure. I'm scared for us as dads and artists. I'm nervous, but then for our kids, it's a totally different level because I have no idea what to guide them
Yeah,
towards. Like what there's
yeah,
so few jobs that are safe. But to get off the
yeah.
scary topics for a second, I
Sorry.
chuckled internally there for a second because I feel like we're getting old when you start sentences with like kids these days.
I still feel like
Um,
a kid.
let's change gears to something that I think a lot of people would be interested in. I know I am, and I want to talk about this. Talk to me about your process because I want to selfishly know how similar it is to mine, and I want to have some uh, some internal connection there because I feel like it's probably
Yeah,
very similar, and so I'm going to
yeah.
enjoy hearing you talk about this. But I feel like your collectors, your fans, your followers, your friends are going to enjoy hearing about this too. So I'm assuming from based on my experience as an artist, your process is probably very different each time, and I'm sure it involves some level of highs and extreme lows, and some torturous problem solving, and some completely riding the wave like it's like you can't do anything wrong. So that's my assumption based on my experience. But tell me what your experience feels like, looks like.
Are you? Well, from you know, I often come up with ideas. Meditation. I have a kind of a very open lifestyle, creative lifestyle where, I mean, I come up with ideas in all kinds of different ways. We talked about how just seeing something like light on the water or a flower, or some microcosm of the world that inspires something, or a photograph that I've seen, or an idea. So I get that kind of the initial inspiration to make something, anything, whether it's a product or a painting, in a multitude of ways. But if you're talking about like taking an idea to fruition, or you're talking about like
You know what? Like
painting or
whatever comes to mind, because I know with like each of your pieces, it's probably a
Mhm.
completely different pathway how you got there. So maybe start framing it in your head with picture in your brain one or two or three pieces that you feel
Mhm.
like you were most tapped into and most in the pocket with, and
Yeah.
maybe how that felt. Because I think non-artists especially really
Mhm.
love to hear how the magic happens and what it feels like, the
Yeah.
journey.
let me try to think about what I can do. Let me grab just a couple, two different paintings that are exactly the same size, and uh, and just talk about just real quick. So let's see. Um, so first one I have here is a new piece that I did. This is of the dirty old wedge, right, in Newport Beach. Very famous painting. Come in, you can see,
But for
you know.
people just listening, it's like very photorealistic, very, very detailed,
Mhm.
beautiful saturation of colors, very, very
Right.
photorealistic type piece.
So then you come in here to something completely different.
Very painterly, very, very brushy, very looser, I should say. Yeah.
And so two pieces, two little canvases, very very similar same size. They're both with acrylics. So like I get an idea and I attack. I'm a problem solver. One of the best tools that I have as an artist and the thing that I teach with art is problem solving and breaking things down to the basics. Color, contrast, composition, very, very the basics. You start there. You start with the color and then the construction. So, you know, I attack and people trip out. And when we do our live stuff, I've seen you paint live. I think you've seen some of my live painting. And I don't prep, I don't sketch. I just brush and go. And this is what I teach people when painting. I said, just get an idea and get some paint on a brush and start moving it. And I use bigger brushes, and I teach using with people to use bigger brushes and looser because it frees you up. And you have this canvas and you need to fill it. And the more you fill it up, the more it starts to really come together. So I break it. I'm looking at a piece and I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to paint this piece of the wedge, and I have this photo. It was based on a Woody Woodworth photo. It was one of our Orange County legends here, and I love the sparkles. So I'm looking at it and going, okay, colors. What's this going to be? What's the sky going to be? What's the water going to be? Kind of like, okay, so with horizon line, and I just start mapping in, just brushing in, like, I know you use a lot of small brushes in detail work, and I watch people, a lot of artists where I've given tips to where you can see the brush strokes and you can see them being, a certain way lateral or unidirectional. And I just like, okay, now we gotta loosen it up. There's this kind of rotation, like an eight or an infinity sign. Let's get a little rotation. Let's move the brush around and get away from this trying to paint something, like paint a face. People try to paint reality, and what you're doing is you're painting illusion. You're painting something that your brain pieces together and puts the pieces together and goes, oh, that's what you're painting. And if you get away from trying to paint like a wave or a face or a body, and you get back into the shapes, the general shapes, the color, the contrast, the tone, um, getting an understanding of those things, that helps me like put these things together very quickly. Like I paint really fast. I get stuck on stuff and kind of, you know, get frustrated. I did this painting of the Duke. Grab this thing. It's a good one to talk about. So this is a painting of Duke Kahanamoku that I'm doing for a show out here, and it's taking two different pieces of photographs, one from him in the Olympics in Oslo, and then a shot of the Outrigger Canoe Club in Waikiki, and putting them together, same era, two different places, but it's very kind of photo real,
Mhm.
and you know and I'm quickly just getting in there, mapping out the pieces of the puzzle, not worrying about the details so much, and filling the canvas full of paint. And I do a lot of process time lapse stuff, just to share with people, artists for sure, and others, I think they find it interesting because my approach is 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 not it's not how a lot of uh, art schools or art is taught. I don't have any basis in color theory. I don't, I'll get certain artists will reach out who are very skilled and very highly trained and will go, oh, you're using this technique and this, that, and the other, and comment on what I'm doing. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm literally just and that's the truth. Like I paint by inspiration. I did this live painting the other day, which is very different. It's kind of more surreal and coming in and big brush mapping in colors, blending colors, making them feel, you know, I mean, from something like this, to a mountain, um, but it's just I attack it. Like, I mean, that's my superpower. I really feel like the creative process because I feel my way through and I break it down into like the shapes, angles. If I'm trying to figure out where this angle is on a body or a wave or a line, I'll use it I'll go to a clock and think about it as like 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. That there's my angle there proportionally. Oh, it's the upper part of the piece. I don't sketch. I don't like graph, do any sort of graphing, anything that would really help me. Um, and I just throw myself into it, and it's something that I just use problem solving. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
That looks like that shape is like this, not like I have to paint this body doing this thing. It's like, well, let's look at the angles, let's look at the shapes, the space that it's taking up, and I break it down and to like spatially, what color is next to that? What color is that? If I'm trying to create something specific, if I'm just free form and just painting, then it's an exploration and it's putting down paint, it's making mistakes. I've started to post some of the pieces. Sweetie, can you stop doing that? Thanks. Um, uh, what was I saying?
You're posting
It's an
some.
exploration where I'm going on this journey with this painting, and yeah, so I started posting paintings of me painting over old paintings,
Mm.
beautiful paintings. I'll start with the video on the piece. And it's like, oh, look at that painting, that's so awesome. And then the brush comes in and just starts painting over it. And it's like, wait, what? No, 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 no. And then it comes together and it's my kids will look at me and get frustrated like when I'm teaching them how to paint. Well, you do it so easily and you can paint this, and I'm like, you watch me. Sometimes I'm painting over and over and over and over again until it gets right. But there's a I think with anything great you have to have a fearlessness. You can't be afraid. It's fear based. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. You can move right on past that, move through it. It's a great exercise for life, like that you're not left with like, oh god, my painting came out so bad. Great. What don't you like about it? Okay, well, the sky is wrong. Da, da, da. Okay, well, that's great. Here, what color are you trying to paint? Here and there. Look at this. If you have a photo reference or a real reference, it's really easy to break that down and teach that process of how do you paint that thing. But it comes from a real understanding of just color, proximity, shapes, and then not trying to paint it literally, but to paint it something that is looks like this. And I use that a lot when I teach painting. It doesn't You're painting something that looks like the thing that you have in mind to paint. And so that's how I do it so fast, is I can break it down. Like if I'm trying to do the little glittery, reflections, like you need to go in close. Like we talked about seeing something, a color, a reflection. You need to go in close and understand what that is. What are you seeing? What is your eye seeing? Because it's hard to quantify it like from way back. It's like, oh, there's yellows and blues and greens, and there's a horizon and a mountain. But then when you come in close, and again, something I use when I teach other people, it's the same thing that I use is what is that? Okay, look here. All that is, you come in close, it's just a bunch of blotches. But what is it? That's a blue, that's a green. They're right next to each other. The shape is this, and they use that as my own basis for creativity is teaching those. It's just breaking it down to this the smallest detail where I know that that's the right color next to that color. And if I need to make it darker, what is that that needs to make it darker? Is it, it's kind of it's blue, it's black, it's purple all together. There's a little green in there, and I'll mix and find that like right onto the canvas. Like I don't use palettes anymore. Um, Straight brush, paint onto brush. I use acrylics mostly now. So there's a little water and paint, make a mistake, paint again, make a mistake, paint again. Sometimes you just nail it and you're like, whoa, good. You know, Other times it's like, I'm trying to paint the piece of the wedge, and along the way, I find, like, as I'm creating, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it the way it is right now. It's abstract, but it has it has all the right colors and the feeling, and I want to stop. And I'm like, God, just paint another one. Just stop here, put it aside, paint another one because that one's so cool. And that's like, man, that's how Dolly painted. That's how all these amazing people who you go, how do you do that? And it's like, well, you just kind of find stuff as you're painting that you just got to start painting. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that's kind of looks like this. And it leads you into these places. I know you do that as well. I think that's really the root of art is when you're getting away from being photo real, is allowing yourself to just find stuff and go on this adventure and and paint and try to free yourself up, and try not to be so detailed in little brushes, and unless you're really trying to achieve something very detailed and small, like, find a flow, find something that feels good, and then maybe you refine it, you know like, I love that, but this part of the painting needs some refinement. What am I going to do? I need to put some shadow in there. I need to change the colors. You know what? I'm going to paint over that whole thing. Yeah, and you know that's what it is. It's this exploration of finding stuff and seeing where it goes, and not being afraid to just go, I don't like this, and paint over it. That's a huge one. Not being too attached to your art. um it, it- but that's my process. It's like, as much as I love painting, it's not my favorite thing to do. It's not the thing that I do. All people are, oh, you must paint all the time. Like, I don't. I get in these, I live life. I'm a dad. I do the business, and then I'll get into these modes where I'm like, I'm doing two or three paintings at a time, and they're all flowing, and I've just busted out two or three pieces, and each one maybe leads to the next, and then I don't paint for a week or two, that's so, yeah, I mean, that's my creative process. It's really organic. And I try to, because I feel like I'm channeling the creativity most of the time, and I feel like I'm watching myself achieve these things. Like, I don't understand where the ability to create anything comes from. I don't. That's why I say it's a superpower, because it's outside of me. It always has been. That's the reason I've committed my life to it. It's a calling, because I can do things that my fellow artists who I respect can't do. And I don't know how I can do them, but I can show you. I don't know where they come from, but it's like, I can show you that it's just basic problem solving, and it's trying to understand color, composition, form, and that is very basic in painting. So there's like the truth, but I like cut corners. I don't believe in going about it in, like, steps. I've never have. I'm like, if I see a way to cut a corner and get from A to D, I'm gonna do it. And here, let me show you how I did that. And I love that. I love that, to just get through stuff and go, what's the quickest way for me to get this thing done, and get that feeling of like, wow, look at that painting. I'm so stoked on that. And that's what I'm doing. I'm painting for me mostly, unless it's commissions for somebody else. Um, you know, uh, it's exciting and fun. It's like, what? Let's see if I could do this. It's I've got that. That's my process. Is like challenging myself. Whoa, like paint this like this Duke painting. It's like it needs to be. It needs to look like a photograph, but it needs to be painterly. It needs to feel like a painting. You know. So how do I get there? Or painting a woman, and it needs to feel like a woman. It needs to not it can't be things that are distracting about it, where people are like, what is that? It can't be. If you're missing it, then if somebody can't feel or see what you're doing. So, we have Instagram, which is fun to test our craft. Test the truth of our craft. Like, here, I'm making this. What do you think? It's a beautiful relationship that I have with the people who enjoy my art and follow me. I know you have that in an enormous way, and that kind of feedback. That's our test. We don't need to be able to wait for a gallery show to be able to share with a very small percentage of people. We get to throw it out to the world and see how people feel, and that pushes our process. It helps us, like, oh, that worked. That really worked. And you know what? I bet I could do that again, and maybe I can do it quicker, easier, or so that's a long way around. You don't
No,
get
no, I
short answers
do.
from me, Jay.
Rob, I love these topics. I could talk about this shit for like 17 hours. There's like a lot to unpack, and I want to comment on so many things that I forgot half of what I wanted to say. But like, first, the one thing that is in front of my mind right now that I don't want to forget talking about is you mentioned something that was I completely 100 million% relate to, in that you don't necessarily paint all the time. You don't necessarily even always love to paint, and that's like a
Yeah,
funny thing
yeah,
to explain to people, isn't it?
yeah,
Because
totally.
when it comes to like hobbies in general or activities like surfing, playing guitar, whatever it might be, hanging out with your kids, these are things that you would do as much as humanly possible all the time, every day. You would never think like, "Oh, I don't wanna do certain things." But when it comes to painting, I'm not like that, and it's like it's strange that the thing that we spend so much of our lives focusing on, painting, creativity, drawing, I don't like to do it all the time either, and I feel like I have to force myself because it's my job, and then once I eventually get myself into it, but it's not like the kind of thing like, picking up my guitar, going to the beach with my kids, hopping in the water, going for a surf, like, that's a different thing, and it is a spiritual journey, which you definitely hinted around at, like, I have a very, very similar outlook and approach where you almost feel like a shaman. You feel like you're channeling
Oh,
this thing,
oh yeah,
and I like to think that people like us kind of have the right way to go about that, and I don't say that in an ego
agree.
way because when we're in that pocket, it has nothing to do with us.
Totally.
It's not so we can talk about it as though it's like this separate entity taking us over, and I'm a huge fan of the muse or the entity or the spirit or the
Yeah,
energy that takes me over and does that, and I feel
totally.
like I'm serving that energy, and I can tell from the way you're talking, like, you feel the exact same way, and it's also super interesting hearing you talk about your painting process because even though a good portion of my work does is intricate, even on the pieces of mine that are intricate, when I'm doing that in those intricate details, I'm focused on like a small area, and within that small area is a composition. So
Yeah, totally.
I'm
Oh,
feeling
I
like
love it. Yeah.
it's all abstract, intuitive, flowy things, but sometimes it's just like a little section of a thing that and then when you zoom out, it turns into something else, and
Yeah.
I feel like that really shows the process you're talking about, the process that I feel like that's our therapy, it's very cathartic, and
Yeah.
sometimes
Art
sometimes
therapy.
yeah, it
Absolutely.
really is. Like sometimes making, you said problem solving, like how do you make this section brighter or darker? Sometimes it's not about making a section brighter, but it's about making the section next to it darker. And sometimes making the color red more red is by putting green next to it, not actually making it more red. And I feel like that really parallels, like, life. Like, I learned a lot of life lessons because when you're parenting or when you're doing other things in life, you think in those terms, like, "Okay, I'm trying to solve this problem with work, my kids, with whatever," and maybe you can You okay over there?
Yeah, she's putting her hand on the fish tank.
Oh, I get it. Um,
Sorry.
oh, no, it's all dude, same stuff goes on here, I get it. Uh,
I know, you
I
know.
I feel like a lot of those, I feel like a lot of those lessons we learn behind the easel apply to other parts of life where if I'm
Yeah,
approaching a problem in work or my kids, I might say, "How do I achieve this?" Maybe it's doing the opposite. Maybe it's doing the opposite elsewhere. If I wanna highlight a portion of my light, maybe it's by putting less attention in another area.
yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's so much truth to that, and the overlap in the way to approach our art versus and how we approach our life. Absolutely.
I
You
I
know,
I feel like, just to kinda cap that thought off before I wind up forgetting where I was going, I think that people that really truly connect to your work or my work or any artist's work for that matter, I think that they can people viewing our work can intuitively tap into that. It's almost like by viewing your work, you can see how you approach those problems, and by seeing how you approach those problems, that energy, that algorithm of life can carry over into other areas of their life.
it's fine, sweetie. You need to leave it alone. Okay. Hold on a sec. We're feeding. She's trying to feed the fish. Just leave that stuff out there. She's like, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I'm gonna repeat that.
Sure.
Yeah, I was basically just saying I feel like by us having that sort of process, people that are viewing our work, I think whether they're aware of it or not, they're actually liking the work because it's having some of that energy, some of those lessons, some of that approach to life is you're visually absorbing that. Like if I can see, hey, Rob is stylizing this painting in such a way or adding colors in such a way, I feel like the relationship to that paralleled into life, there's a carryover. If I could see, hey, maybe instead of uh, focusing on every single detail in my life, maybe I can just simplify it and block it into a certain way of thinking about it. In the same way that you might block in the painting behind you a certain section in yellow, as opposed to putting all the details in. Maybe people viewing that can think, hey, I'm seeing that, and that's reminding me that maybe I could take my own life and simplify certain areas. Maybe I could take my own life and
Yeah.
stylize things and look at it in a different way. I think it's good art, art that's made from the soul, I think can teach people that you can compose your own life in a beautiful way as well. You can make decisions in a way that an artist makes their decisions, whether it's intuitive or whether it's a feeling. It doesn't always have to be so
Yeah.
hard and so literal and so complex.
Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely. My life, the way I operate my life, and on all different ways, is very much a reflection of how I paint and create. They are hand in hand. They are the same kind of thing. I'm looking for. I'm problem solving. It is comes down to that. I always try to like you know uh, simplify everything, but it really comes down to just here's the problem. What's the best, healthiest, easiest way to achieve that goal? Whether it's making a meal or going on a trip, or it's like what do you need? Like what are you going to need to do? It definitely eyes forward. There's a lot of looking at predicting results. That's a big part of like everything that I do, and how I get to a finished painting or whatever is understanding if I do this, what's likely to happen, or where am I likely going to be, and then what, and what if, and so it is looking at trying to make life easier, trying to be able to get to a finish point. Where do you want to go? How do you get there? And what's the best way to go and do it? And that's with every painting, with everything I approach uh, in life. There's an organic quality to it because you have to be fluid especially in this day and age. You have to be willing to change, to go with the flow, to see that, wow, that didn't work. And same thing with art, going somewhere and going, that doesn't work. Now what? And then backtracking or moving forward, figuring out, but yeah, it's constantly problem solving, and looking for the best way to go about something or approach something. What do I need to do? Then what? Then what? Then what? And then alternatives. And it keeps it simple. Life is not simple, but it gives you most of the tools that you need to do anything. Is to not be rigid or flexible. Some people believe in that, and that's how they operate. Maybe when your boys, getting the learning that like bedtimes and schedules, like the more you try to adhere to them, the more frustrated you're going to become eventually, because life is in control, not you. And his best laid plans, you can do everything right, and life comes on and goes, nope. And then what? God, are you going to let that destroy you and freeze you and frustrate you, or are you going to be fluid and flexible and go, okay, I need to come up with how the next thing. One of the reasons I love golf, because it's very much like art or life. We are not in control. We have a certain amount of that we can control, but the environment, life, fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, is in control, and you must be aware that in the end, that is what rules. You, and having that humility that we are not in control of everything, and to know that like life's going to throw me some curveballs. There's going to be some challenges. I'm not going to necessarily, this isn't going to necessarily work out the way I want, but I'm going to still go through the process of approaching it, looking at it, dealing with it in this manner, having a goal, but then allowing some flexibility in case something goes wrong. And then if it does, okay, let's what's next? How do I get back on track? Golf's great that way. You hit the perfect shot, it lands, hits a rock and bounces into the bushes. Oh gosh, I hit that perfect. Everything was good, but life happened and now it's in the bushes. So what do I need to do now to get myself back on track? You know, with art, with life, constantly looking at that process of just where do I want to be? How do I get there? And what happens if things don't go the way I want them to? Kind of having an idea instead of being like, "Oh my God, it didn't go the way I wanted. Now I don't know what to do." Like then, yeah, I mean, you need to be ready to reassess, look at it. What do you want to achieve? How do and I use that with my art. I use that with my life, my relationships, and just come at it in a way that you can't be afraid of failing, can't be afraid of things not going your way. You got to have the hope that they will. You got to have the belief that you're working towards a positive goal or direction for you or your family or your business. you know but the humility to know that you can do everything right and it still may not work out, and not letting that derail you, because you know if we did, as artists, we would have been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In wrapping up, are there any topics or things that are prominent in your mind that we didn't touch upon, or anything you want to bring where we, 'cause we're on both
Yeah,
on
I don't know. I mean,
kinda
there's
schedules. I got my kids
yeah,
upstairs. I presume dad
totally.
duty soon, but, what is there anything else we haven't touched upon that you might feel like would be fun to chat about, or anything, that's on your mind
Gosh,
that, we can bring up still?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things. I think I yammered, like you. I'm passionate about the stuff, our world, and we could go deep dive into the direction of the world, or politics, or AI, or you know fate and destiny, and the directions. Yeah, I don't know. I just I don't know. This is the in anything that I would bring up we would probably get into another deep dive.
Yeah,
So I mean,
probably. Well,
you know,
I'll say this, in something you brought up several times, I'm a big believer in. You talked about not being afraid to make mistakes, not being too attached to your work. I think that again parallels life where you shouldn't be too attached to your ego. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times the best thing that I can do for a painting is walk away because sometimes working on a painting and there's like a section or some part of it. Often it's the part of the painting that first drew me to the painting in the first place that I have to like have the courage to get rid of. And sometimes I'll be working on that for a really long time and I will be in love with it, but it just doesn't work. It's not fitting. It doesn't make sense. And at some point you have to sometimes you have to step away to kind of get the courage up to like lose the attachment of like, all right, you know what? Just gotta do this, gotta psych yourself up and all right,
Yeah,
wipe it out.
totally. It's
And
great.
that is such a hard thing to do as an artist, but it's a great lesson in life too. And I want to say that
Uh-huh.
I have a lot of friends that are not artists that they look at our careers and they say there's things they envy, there's things they don't envy, like our wallets probably. but one of the things I feel like a lot of people are that prevents them from being more artistic is they're afraid to like lose the identity and the of their career or their steady paycheck or
Sure.
any number of very valid things to be concerned
Yeah.
about. But it takes a certain type of a personality to wipe out a complete painting after you've done it, or change career paths and pivot and try something that you might fail at. So I think that was one of the
Yeah.
more profound things that you kept drilling in. That
Yeah.
I think we're more intuitive with it, like it's normal for us, but most people listening would not be as comfortable to just switch careers or work on a craft or crochet a blanket and be like, oh fuck it, I'm gonna start over,
Yeah.
you know?
It's a it's good, and it brings me to something else, and the not being too attached to anything and being able to have the courage to move forward and make the best of what has happened and then hopefully find some truth in it. And one thing that I has led me and guided me and inspired me and given me faith is this idea of my faith, which is really in life that we there is like we have a destiny, and not everybody is it can have the courage, and I believe that people who are, the courage to realize that life isn't always easy, and some of the challenges, the hardest things you go through happen to us to take us through to this, where we need to go. And it's like you talking about painting over a piece of a painting that you're like, oh god, and it's hard, but what you realize after you do it over and over again is that there's a truth in that, and that usually it leads you to a place where you go, whoa, I would never have gotten here. And wow, I'm so happy that I had the courage, or whatever it is, to move through this, to paint over that painting and get to this place. I do that constantly, having like where like you said, the painting's great, it's good, but I'm gonna have to have the courage to paint over it and move past it. I've gone through in the last 2.5 years, my family, moving from Costa Rica, my family broke up, and we were beat by COVID and life and energies and partnerships. But I got divorced and gone through stuff with my kids and not be able to be with them as much as I want and having to fight for those things. And wow, like that's something that like I've had to come to terms with and realize that like life was guiding me somewhere else, and that I needed to have faith that it's going to work out. Same thing, work back on process. What do I need to do today? What needs to How do I attend to this? What do I need to push through? And then being able to like see the signs that, wow, okay, I like where this is going. I see that there's truth here, and that like you know I was stuck in this place, and I really had to go through this transition, this pain, this suffering, these trials, this change, have the courage to be able to step away, you know, then come back and retool it, paint over it, redo it, take it in a different direction, be okay with that really uncomfortable and often painful, scary place that comes from at that transition through something. like taking a, painting over a painting that you love to get to that place, leaving a relationship that is toxic and not providing, a healthy path, and knowing that, you don't know what's going to happen, and that you just have to believe that, that you want to be happy, you want to be content, you want to go in a direction that is, more positive, and that's life. We talked about from the right in the beginning, like, as an artist, you're never there. You need to be constantly looking ahead, and planning, having backup plans, and doing as many different things as you can to put yourself in a position that is fluid, that is creative, that you're evolving and growing, and none of that happens without pain, without fear, without being, stepping out of your comfort zone. And, that's art, that's life. That is the root of being a good artist and a good human, is dealing with that fear, being able to hold on, push through, stay focused, be flexible, say, hey, you know what? There's something that's happening here, and I need to have faith that, you know, being a good person, um, putting in the work, giving love, expressing empathy, looking around you, all these little things that are just like daily practices and awareness that are all outside of ourselves, just beyond our taking care of ourselves, actually is the work, is the things that need to be done to get there. It's every brushstroke that goes into painting over that painting and then recreating it or moving it on, is is a daily life, is that process that gets us through, uh, you know um, yeah, and I'll say one last thing, about that, and it comes into back to this thing about not being afraid to make mistakes or move on, is that the worst thing that you can, the hardest challenge is for an artist or a person in life to need perfection, to
Mm.
strive. I mean, it's a great thing to have as a model, like, hey, here's perfect, let's move in that direction. But I know so many artists and people, who looked for the perfect relationship or looked for this painting to be the perfect thing, and were so unhappy and discontent because they were never going to be happy until it was perfect, which means they're never going to be happy. And these people are tortured, and for most of them that I know, it's taken a very long time to end up getting to the place that they find some happiness or contentment. And as an artist, as a human, like, I don't try to be perfect. I try to, I'm like the 96, 97, 98% guy. Like, that's good enough, because that last 1, 2, 3% to try to dial your life or your art in to be perfect will take you the rest of your life. And, you know, I can do 95, 96% of, I mean, it's a random number, but just like, it's pretty damn close. I'm good. Move on. And I'll paint, let's say for art, I'll paint 10 paintings for, a fellow artist who's stuck on that paints one, or, you know, uh, and life's the same way, life is not perfect. And you just got to have the courage to keep doing the work, and, trying to move forward, and not being afraid if it doesn't go your way. And that's okay, because it just doesn't. It's like telling my kids, like, you see daddy painting this over and over and over again. All you're thinking about is the end result that looks so great. But, you know, to know what went into that, and all the steps, and the pain, the fear, the choices to get to that place, like, that's the work, that's life, and that means more than anything. And in that process of just trying to make it work, and not being afraid to fail.
Love that. Not being afraid to fail. That's a huge one. Rob, man, thank you. This was
Thank you, Jay.
dude, it was a great podcast, but I just love talking to you, even if we weren't recording it. I love our conversations, and
Do this for hours.
can you, dude, seriously, just on art process alone, it's just nice
Yeah.
having someone that relates to the insanity that goes on in your brain so well. And can you tell people where they can find you, how they can find you, so they can look up your work? I would tell them to go to your website, but I was on it earlier, and I don't think you updated it in 20 years. So what's a better place they can go to?
Yeah, well, the thing about my website too is it crashed on me a couple years ago, and it the server had an old server and it crashed, and then they kind of tried to piece it back together. Hold on, see what we're gonna do. I don't know what we're gonna do today. What are we gonna do today? It's a question. But yeah, so the website, I started building another one, and then I've had so many different things going on, including my life. Ouch. You okay? She's banged her things. You gotta be careful. Life, divorce, like total upheaval in life, moving back from Costa Rica and trying. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie. She banged her knee. Yeah, so my website havassyart.com is a shell of what it used to be, and I am in the process of building a new site, but it was such a huge site that I'm not really sure what it is. Surf Story Project is a good website. It has our books on it, Surf Story books that feature Jay and so many other artists. It has some of my smaller projects on it, Marin's Way book, and some of my calendars. I've done so. There's surfstoryproject.com. But the main thing I would hope that people would get a chance to see me uh, on his Instagram or Facebook. And I'm not the artist who I'm out there. I'm me as a family man, as a father is a primary thing. So these Instagrams, just FYI, reflect my life, and the my art is a reflection of my life. So it's me with my kids and my friends and memories and my art and my projects. And I'm all out there with it. It's kind of like a blog, but it represents most everything that I'm doing in my life. It's a daily journal. Like I'm with my daughter this week for our 1 week in our summer, so there's a lot of stuff of her on there. But there's also the art that I'm working on, the different commercial projects I'm working on. So it's Robb Havassy Art is my Instagram. So and I spell my first name with two B's, so it's ROBB, and my last name is Havassy. No E's in my name. People like to take B's away and add E's to my name. So it's Robb Havassy Art on Instagram, and Robb Havassy on Facebook, Havassy Art on Facebook. I have a new bag line called Art Sacks. So Art Sacks collection, Art Sacks with an X. Surf Story Project, which is our great collaborative grassroots artist collective. That's also on Instagram and Facebook, Surf Story Project. So much stuff going on, Jay, like you, so many things that are in the works, a lot of exciting things, and then just my normal life. And yeah, my Instagram is really the place I think that is the best balance of what I'm doing and the easiest place for people to go and check out.
I'll make sure I include all the links so people can find you real easy. And Rob, well, hey Lolo, I just dropped my headphones. Hang on a second. So professional of me dropping my headphones in mid
Oh
conversation.
my gosh, I'm so
There we go.
professional. I'm so
Um,
unprofessionally professional. That's me.
oh man, what was I saying? Oh,
I
dude,
love you lots, pal.
dude, I appreciate you so much, and I want everyone to check your work out.
Likewise.
But, I'm a fan of you as a human just as much as your artwork. Like I said earlier, I appreciate everything you've done for me. You've been one of the handful of people that have been extremely supportive, both as an artist and a friend. And even though we don't talk as much as I wish we did, we always pick up where we left off, and that's
Yeah,
really what matters most. And
I agree.
yeah, I just appreciate you a lot. I really admire what you're doing, and I connect
Yeah,
with you creatively. And thanks for doing this because
yeah.
it was one of those conversations I really wanted to be documented because I love our talks.
I love it too, and I appreciate you and you supporting me just in sharing my work here and in the past through your gallery. I mean, you are definitely one of the kindred spirits in this culture. of ours, and somebody I admire as a person, as a dad, as an artist, as a businessman, as a partner. I adore your wife. She's amazing. I love seeing your kids. You guys, I had relationship envy for a very long time, through my troubled times, but am currently, life has brought me through this family transition to somebody who is a fellow creative and an amazing woman. And so, like, I feel like silver linings are abound in my life, and that I was meant to go this route. And I have new love, new inspiration. That's the best thing for an artist, whether becoming a father, and loving those kids, or falling in love again with somebody who is, a great match, and we make a great team like you and Chelsea. And it's just so neat to to see life at work and destiny unfolding, and feeling like, I'm right where I'm meant to be. And even though it ain't easy, um, but I feel like very kindred to you, and also now with my relationship to you guys. I don't have relationship envy anymore, but I did for a long time.
Have to get
Huge
everyone
fan of
together.
you, Jay.
Yeah, you gotta get everyone together. I would love that.
Oh gosh, I talked to Steph about it. I was like telling her about you and Chelsea, and the kids, and life, and us, and how we've always just, there's so many parallels with us, but we're so different. And that I think you're just a phenomenal person, and such a great creative, and help, like myself, someone who's perpetuating the culture, and not giving voice to your fellow artists, people that, or people, that you think are interesting. And kudos, brother.
Yeah, man. Right on. Well, I'm gonna go back to being a dad. I gotta go upstairs. I hear the little pitter patter upstairs, which means they're getting
All right,
fidgety and antsy up there.
much
But
much love, my bro.
send love to the
Thank you.
girls and your lady, and it's
Gotcha.
yeah, lots of love, brother.
Okay.